It started with a joke, just a silly, harmless joke. The kind of thing couples say to each other when they've run out of things to talk about but still want to sound playful. The night was calm. Too calm, maybe. The TV murmured in the background, the baby was giggling in his father's arms, and for a moment everything felt right, ordinary, safe. I remember watching them, the way my husband lifted our son into the air, the baby's tiny hands grabbing at his face, both of them laughing. There was this warmth that filled the room, the kind that makes you forget how fragile happiness can be. And then I said it. I still hear the words echoing in my head. Wow, he looks just like your best friend, Mark. I laughed right after, a soft, teasing laugh. It wasn't even meant to sting. Mark had been his friend since high school. Tall, charming, always around. We'd all shared dinners, birthdays, holidays. It was just a passing remark, something meaningless. But my husband didn't laugh. He froze, mid-smile, like someone had pressed pause on him. His eyes stopped sparkling. His hands tightened slightly around our son's waist. It was so subtle I almost missed it. And then he looked at me. Not angry, not yet, just searching, like he was trying to read something hidden in my face. I smiled back, tried to brush it off, but there was a weight in the air that hadn't been there a second ago. Something unspoken, sharp, invisible, like a thread had snapped somewhere between us, and we both heard it. He handed me the baby, kissed me on the cheek, and said quietly, "I'll put him to bed." And in that silence that followed, I suddenly wished I could take those words back, because that's when it happened, the first crack. The moment everything began to fall apart, even if I didn't see it yet. At first, I thought he was just being quiet, maybe tired, maybe work was getting to him again. But something in him had changed. It was in the way he moved, slower, heavier, as if every step he took carried a secret he didn't want to share. The laughter was gone. Even the way he looked at me. It wasn't really at me anymore, it was through me, like I'd turned into a ghost in my own home. The first few days I tried to ignore it. I told myself, he just needs space. But then the distance stopped being invisible. It became physical. He started sleeping in the guest room. No fight, no explanation, just a quiet, deliberate retreat. At dinner, we'd sit across from each other in silence. The clinking of silverware became unbearable. I'd try to ask about his day. How was work? And he'd answer with a word, maybe two. Fine. Long. And then his phone started ringing more often, late at night, unknown numbers. Sometimes he'd step outside to take them, saying nothing when he came back in. I told myself not to snoop, that it wasn't my place. But every woman knows that silence can scream louder than words. One morning I found his coffee still warm on the table, untouched. The baby's toy car lay beside it. The seat across from me was empty again. The house started feeling wrong. Not haunted by ghosts, haunted by absence. The baby would crawl toward the hallway, expecting to see his father, but there was no one there. I'd catch myself staring at the clock, waiting for him to come home, and realizing I didn't even know what home meant anymore. The air grew thick with things neither of us said. His footsteps at night sounded heavier. The distance between our rooms, shorter than 10 meters, felt like miles. And that one stupid joke I made kept echoing in my head like a curse I didn't mean to cast. I didn't know it yet, but it had already started destroying everything. He started looking through old photos. Not ours, not family pictures, but the ones of him and Mark. Their arms around each other, laughing, drunk on friendship and youth. That kind of bond you think will last forever. At first, I didn't think much of it. Nostalgia, I told myself. Men get sentimental too sometimes. But then I saw the way his eyes moved. Not over the memories, but through them. Scanning, studying, comparing. One night, he sat at the kitchen table long after I'd gone to bed. I woke up to the faint light from his phone screen. He was scrolling through old photos again, zooming in on Mark's face, then on the baby's, back and forth, like he was lining up puzzle pieces that refused to fit. He started measuring, I remember thinking, comparing, calculating. Every glance from our baby became a test, every smile a question. Does he have Mark's eyes, his dimples, his stupid, crooked grin? At breakfast, he barely looked at me anymore, only at our child, watching him like a detective, trying to confirm a theory he was too afraid to say aloud. And then, he finally did. "I ordered something," he said, his voice calm, too calm. "What kind of something?" I asked, forcing a laugh. He looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time in days. "A DNA kit. Just curious." I laughed again, but it came out wrong, too high-pitched, too quick. "You're joking, right?" But he wasn't. His eyes didn't move, didn't blink. They were cold, calculating, like he'd already decided what he wanted to believe. In that moment, I realized the joke wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't even a joke, it was a sentence, and I had written it myself. The days after he ordered that DNA kit felt like standing at the edge of a storm that refused to break. Nothing happened, yet everything was already ending. I tried to act normal. I cooked his favorite dinner, the one I used to make when we were happy. The house smelled like rosemary and garlic, but he didn't even look up from his phone. I texted him sweet things, little inside jokes, tiny attempts at warmth. He read them, but he never replied. It was like living with a ghost who still breathed. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse, he just existed in silence. And that silence was louder than any fight we'd ever had. Every night I'd lie beside him, listening to the sound of the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. And it felt like the seconds were carving out pieces of me. Every tick was a question. Every tick was a reminder. Was this the moment he'd stop loving me? Was this the day he'd find out the truth, or decide he already had? I remember one evening I tried to take his hand, just to feel him, to remind myself that we were still real. He didn't pull away, but he didn't hold me either. His eyes stayed fixed on the TV, blank, distant, unseeing. The blue light flickered across his face, and for a second I thought, this must be what purgatory feels like. Days bled into nights, nights into mornings. The same quiet, the same fear, the same unbearable waiting, and every tick of that damn clock sounded like a countdown to the end of my life as I knew it. Not a bang, not a scream, just time, quietly killing everything that used to be love. The morning was cold, painfully, unnaturally cold. Not the kind that comes from the weather, but the kind that comes from silence. He was sitting at the kitchen table, the same spot where we used to drink coffee and talk about everything and nothing. Only this time there was no coffee, just an envelope. White, thin, final. The DNA kit. He held it like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His thumb traced the edge again and again. And I wanted to say something, anything, but my voice refused to come out. "Do you want me to open it?" I finally whispered. He didn't answer, just tore it open with a single sharp motion. The sound of paper ripping felt louder than thunder. He unfolded the paper slowly, eyes scanning every line. His face didn't change, not a twitch, not a blink. I watched him breathe out once, softly. Then he placed the letter back into the envelope, as if it were something sacred. And then he stood up. No shouting, no crying, no words at all. He just reached for his car keys. I said his name. Once, twice. He didn't turn around. The sound of his footsteps, heavy, deliberate, filled the whole house. And when the door finally closed behind him, it felt like the air left with him. Everything after that moment was still. The world didn't move. Even the clock seemed to stop. I wanted him to scream, to ask me why, to do something. Anything that meant there was still a we left to fight for. But he didn't. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just vanished. And the quiet he left behind was louder than any goodbye I've ever heard. The days after he left didn't come one by one. They just blurred. Morning bled into night, and night into nothing. The house still smelled like him. Coffee, cologne, the faint scent of motor oil from his jacket, but he wasn't there. His toothbrush was gone, his shoes, his laptop, even the framed photo from the hallway. Everything that said he existed was quietly erased. I called him at first, every hour, then once a day, then once a week. No answer. His number turned into a dull, automated voice. This user is no longer available. His social media? Deleted. Every trace of him gone. It felt like I'd imagined our life together, like it had never been real. I told myself I wasn't guilty. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. It was a joke, just a stupid, meaningless joke. But the punishment didn't care. It came anyway. Nights became the worst. I'd sit by the window, scrolling through old photos. The three of us, him, our son, and his best friend Mark. There was one photo I couldn't stop looking at. They were at the barbecue last summer, both laughing, both holding the baby. And for the first time, I saw it. Just for a moment, a flicker. Something in the baby's eyes, the shape of the smile. Not identical, not enough to be proof, but enough to hurt. I whispered to myself over and over, as if saying it might undo everything. It was just a joke, just a joke. But the silence that followed, it felt like the world disagreeing. Because deep down, maybe I knew. Some jokes don't end with laughter. It had been months since he walked out the door. Months of silence so thick it felt alive, creeping into every corner of the house, curling around the baby's crib, whispering through the empty side of the bed. Then one morning, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in his handwriting, that same careful, deliberate script I used to love. My hands were shaking before I even opened it. Inside, just one line. The test was negative. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanation, no "I miss you," not even his name at the bottom, just that, a fact, and an apology that came months too late. But then, I noticed another sheet folded behind the first one. A photograph. It was our baby, laughing in the park, and beside him another man, someone I didn't know. For a second my breath caught in my throat. The man had the same dark eyes, the same little smile. And under the picture, written in his hand again, "He looks like me too." I sat there for a long time, not crying, not angry, just hollow. Because in that moment I realized it was never about proof, never about DNA or guilt. It was about something much darker, much lonelier. The fear that maybe love isn't real unless it's confirmed by paper. That maybe we don't trust what we see or who we hold unless a lab says we should. I looked at my baby again. He was smiling, reaching for the light streaming through the window. And for the first time in months, I smiled too, because I finally understood. Sometimes the things we say as jokes are the truths we're too afraid to face.